Black CEO expelled from her own jewelry store. The action she took surprised everyone. Tuesday morning's sun in Copacabana was gentle, filtered through a light morning mist that promised a hot day. For Mariana Almeida, 40, the salty air blowing from the sea brought a sense of nostalgia and purpose. She got out of the rideshare car a block away on purpose. She wanted to walk, feel the pulse of the street, be just another person strolling down Avenida Nossa Senhora de Copacabana. Today, she was not the CEO of Jewelry Empire, one of the largest luxury jewelry chains in the country. She was simply Mariana. She wore a simple sand-colored linen dress, low leather sandals, and carried a straw bag, a look that evoked more of a carefree stroll along the waterfront than a business visit. On her wrist was a discreet piece, but of immense sentimental value, a woven silver bracelet, the first piece of jewelry she designed and crafted with her own hands, years before her empire was even a dream. Before continuing the story, I ask you to subscribe so you don't miss more incredible stories like this one. Let's continue the story. The facade of Jewelry Empire was imposing, with golden letters and a window display that showcased, with sobriety and elegance, pieces from its newest collection. As she pushed open the heavy glass door, the noise of the city was replaced by a climate-controlled silence and a unique aroma, a blend of verbena and amber that she had personally approved. The interior was a sanctuary of luxury. Dark marble flooring, polished glass counters where diamonds and emeralds sparkled like captured stars, and lighting designed to enhance every facet and every carat. On the other side of the salon, Clara Mendes, the manager, observed everything with eagle eyes. With her impeccably tailored suit, tight bun, and a rehearsed smile that didn't reach her eyes, Clara was the personification of the elite she believed she represented. She saw the store not as a business, but as her fiefdom, an exclusive club where appearance was the first and most important admission criterion. When her eyes landed on Mariana, her face contorted into a mask of subtle disdain. She saw the simple dress, the worn sandals, the straw bag. She did not see a potential customer. She saw a threat to the sophistication she worked so hard to maintain. A black woman dressed that way in that environment could only mean one thing to her: trouble. Mariana, oblivious to the storm brewing in the manager's gaze, walked slowly, appreciating her own work. She stopped in front of a display case, leaning in to admire a Paraíba tourmaline necklace, one of her favorite creations. She felt a chill at the nape of her neck, the unmistakable sensation of being watched. It was not the attentive observation of a salesperson ready to help, but a heavy, judgmental gaze. She saw through the glass reflection Clara whisper something to a security guard, and then to a younger saleswoman, who cast a nervous glance in her direction. A tired sigh nearly escaped her lips. So many years, so much success, and yet certain battles insisted on repeating themselves. A wave of disappointment washed over her, but it was quickly replaced by a cold resolve. She would not back down. She would see how far this would go. With a deliberately calm demeanor, she continued her inspection. It was then that Clara decided to intervene. She crossed the hall with steady steps, the sound of her heels echoing on the marble like a judge's verdict. She stopped beside Mariana, but did not look directly at her. Instead, she gazed at the necklace in the display case, as if Mariana's mere presence was contaminating it. "What can I do for you?" Clara said, her voice laden with a false politeness that barely concealed her contempt. "Are you looking for something? Or perhaps you've lost your way? The service entrance is at the back." The question hung in the air, heavy with prejudice, initiating the confrontation that would forever change the fate of that store. Certainly. Here is the continuation, focused on the second chapter of the story. The poison in Clara Mendes's voice was as tangible as the sparkle of the jewels around them. Mariana, however, absorbed the insult without faltering. She slowly raised her gaze, meeting the cold eyes of the manager. There was no anger on her face, but a deep, cutting calm that seemed to disarm Clara for a millisecond. Mariana's response was soft yet firm, each word spoken with a clarity that filled the tense silence. "I haven't lost my way. I'm just looking, thank you." The simplicity of the response, devoid of the angry or submissive reaction Clara expected, acted as a trigger for the manager's arrogance. That woman was not shrinking away. She was not apologizing for her mere existence in that sacred space. To Clara, it was an act of defiance. She crossed her arms, the smile of false politeness transforming into an openly disdainful sneer. "Looking for what exactly?" she hissed, her voice now louder, drawing the attention of an elegant couple examining an engagement ring and the two younger saleswomen who stopped what they were doing. their faces pale. "With all due respect, ma'am, I think our pieces are a bit out of your reality. We don't want you to waste your time or ours." The insult was now direct, a social barrier erected with words. Mariana maintained eye contact, her silence becoming a powerful weapon. It was then that Clara's gaze dropped to Mariana's wrist, fixing on the silver bracelet. A short, mocking laugh escaped her lips. "Ah, I see," she said, nodding with her chin. "You came looking for something to match your costume jewelry. I'm afraid we only deal with precious metals here. Gold, platinum, things of real value. Surely you won't find anything like this here." The humiliation was now a public spectacle. The couple of customers averted their gaze, visibly uncomfortable. One of the saleswomen, Beatrice, instinctively took a step back, her hand covering her mouth in shock. The other, Anna, seemed paralyzed, her eyes wide with disbelief. The security guard, Lucas, a tall man with broad shoulders, shifted his weight from one foot to the other near the door, his face a mask of professional conflict and personal decency. For Mariana, the mockery about the bracelet was the deepest offense. That piece was not silver, it was the embodiment of her beginning, forged in the fire of her dreams, a talisman that reminded her of the humility and passion that built everything. Clara, in her arrogant ignorance, was spitting on the very soul of the jewelry empire. The CEO felt a cold fury rising up her spine, but she contained it with the discipline of years leading a multi-billion-dollar company. She would not give Clara the satisfaction of a fight. She would give a lesson. Realizing that her words could not break Mariana's unshakable demeanor, Clara decided it was time for the final card. Her mind, poisoned by prejudice, fabricated the only conclusion that seemed logical to her. If the woman was not there to buy and was not intimidated, she could only have bad intentions. She turned to the security guard, her voice sounding like a decree. "Lucas," she called imperiously, "this woman has been acting suspiciously since she walked in. I refuse to allow the name of Jewelry Empire to be put at risk." She turned back to Mariana, cruel triumph shining in her eyes. "I will be forced to take measures to ensure the safety of the store." And then she issued the order that would seal her fate, the final word in her display of power. "Lucas, search her bag, now." Clara's order echoed in the sepulchral silence of the store. "Now." For a moment, no one moved. The security guard, Lucas, seemed rooted to the spot, his face tense in a visible battle between professional duty and his own conscience. His eyes met Mariana's, and in them was a silent plea for forgiveness. Clara, impatient, shot him a look. "I gave an order, Lucas. Or do you want to join her on the street?" The threat, low and cruel, was enough to break his inertia. With heavy, reluctant steps, he approached. "Ma'am, I'm very sorry," he murmured, his voice deep and choked. "It's the rules." Mariana, however, offered him a nearly imperceptible nod, a gesture of understanding that seemed to absolve him of that humiliating order. With a serenity that violently contrasted with the ugliness of the situation, she herself picked up her straw bag and gently placed it on the glass counter, the muffled sound resonating like a hammer in the silence. "Feel free," she said, her voice perfectly even. "Please, do your job." That act of dignified cooperation was more disconcerting than any protest. Under Clara's triumphant gaze, Lucas opened the bag. His expression was one of pure discomfort as he rummaged through its contents. He pulled out a simple leather wallet, a worn paperback book, a small bottle of sunscreen and a bunch of keys. Nothing more. There were no hidden jewels, no tools, no sign of ill intent. It was the contents of an ordinary woman's bag on an ordinary day. He closed the bag and turned to Clara, relief and shame mixed on his face. "There's nothing, ma'am, absolutely nothing." Clara frowned, victory draining from her face and giving way to an irritated confusion. She had expected tears, a scandal, a confession. Mariana's calm was driving her insane. "Well, she must have hidden it somewhere else," the manager began, already searching for another accusation. But she didn't have time to finish. Mariana reached out and took her bag back. With the same deliberate calm, she slipped her hand inside and pulled out her smartphone. For a moment, Clara presumed she would call the police, a complication she felt perfectly capable of handling with her connections and status. But what Mariana did was much worse. She unlocked the screen and dialed a number from her contacts. The first hello from the other end of the line was heard by everyone in the silent store. "Carlos, good morning." "It's Mariana," she said, her business voice taking control, clear, precise, unquestionably in command. The couple of customers exchanged glances, curiosity overcoming discomfort. Clara felt an inexplicable chill run down her spine. "Everything is fine here. I need you to call an emergency meeting with the board, please. Put Dr. Alencar and Mrs. Vasconcelos on the line for me, on speakerphone. It's an urgent corporate governance matter. The names: Alencar, the gruff chairman; Vasconcelos, the largest individual shareholder after the founder herself, made Clara's blood run cold. They were legendary figures within the company, names she only heard in official statements. A buzzing began in her ears. What was happening? Mariana then lifted her eyes from the phone and fixed them directly on Clara, a cold, penetrating intensity in her gaze. Yes, Carlos, I'll explain the reason for the urgency, she continued on the phone, not blinking. I'm making a surprise visit to our Copacabana unit, and I've just been publicly humiliated and accused of theft by the store manager. There was a dramatic pause. The color completely drained from Clara's face, her lips parted in silent shock. Mariana concluded, her voice resonating with the weight of an empire. Yes, it's me, Mariana Almeida. If the previous silence was heavy, what followed the revelation of the name Mariana Almeida was dense and suffocating. It was as if the very air in the store had solidified, trapping everyone at the precise moment reality shattered. The name hung in the air, not as an introduction, but as a verdict. For Clara Mendez, it felt as though the polished marble floor opened beneath her feet. The arrogance, the upright posture, the sneering smile, all crumbled in an instant. Her face, once flushed with anger and power, turned a waxy pallor, and her eyes, previously cold and judgmental, were now wide with pure panic and disbelief. Her mind raced in despair, trying and failing to process the catastrophe she had caused herself. The woman she had humiliated, whom she accused of being a thief for wearing a simple dress and a silver bracelet, was the owner of everything, the founder, the legend. The instinct for self-preservation, desperate and belated, finally kicked in. Clara stepped forward, her hands trembling, extended in a gesture of pleading. Ma'am, Mariana, I apologize, she stammered, her voice unrecognizable, stripped of all her previous authority. It was a regrettable misunderstanding. If I had known who you were, I would never. Mariana raised a hand, a simple gesture that silenced Clara instantly. Her eyes held not fury, but a cold and impenetrable disappointment that was in some way far worse. The problem, Clara, is exactly that, Mariana said, her voice calm but sharp as a diamond. You should not have to know who I am to treat me with dignity. The issue was never my identity, but your judgment, and you judged. She paused, still with the phone to her ear, ensuring her leadership was witnessing every word. You did not commit a misunderstanding. You committed an act of prejudice. You presumed that, because of my clothing and the color of my skin, I did not belong in this place, the place I built. Turning back to the phone, her voice regained the tone of a CEO. Dr. Alencar, Ms. Vasconcelos, what you have just witnessed is a serious failure in the culture we strive to create, a culture of inclusion and respect, and failures like this must be addressed decisively. She listened for a moment to her advisor's responses, and then nodded. Her gaze returned to the pathetic figure of Clara. And I know from HR reports that reached my desk last week that this is not an isolated incident. We have received complaints about your treatment of both clients and employees who do not fit your standards. I came here today to see with my own eyes, and you have exceeded my worst expectations. Each word was a nail in the coffin of Clara's career. Hope drained from her face, replaced by the harsh and cold reality of her actions. Mariana Almeida was not there merely as an offended client. She was there as an executive, conducting a final and relentless audit. The jewelry empire was founded on the principle that beauty and value come in all shapes, colors, and origins. It's a pity that you, as our representative, never understood that. Mariana then delivered the final blow, her last words sealing the matter with a terrible finality. Clara Mendez, consider your employment contract with this company terminated. Immediately, please hand over your keys and your badge to the security guard and leave. Mariana's final order hung in the air, irrevocable. Clara Mendez stood frozen for a moment, her face a mask of complete devastation. The reality of her self-imposed professional ruin, executed in less than 10 minutes, was overwhelming. Without a word, she mechanically turned, removed the badge from her suit, and placed it on the counter with a trembling hand. She then reached for the keys in her bag. The metallic clinking was the only sound in the room, a fragile noise marking the end of her reign. She handed everything to Lucas, the security guard, without being able to look him in the eye. Then, with her shoulders hunched and her gaze fixed on the ground, the woman who minutes before had carried herself like the queen of that castle left like a pariah, disappearing into the bright light of the Copacabana sidewalk. With Clara's departure, the tension in the store transformed. The couple of customers, who had witnessed the entire drama in silence, exchanged a glance and discreetly left, leaving Mariana alone with the 3 remaining employees. Lucas, Beatrice, and Anna remained still, the air thick with uncertainty about what would come next. They were the last pieces on the board, and the Queen had just made her decisive move. Mariana concluded her call with the council. "Thank you, gentlemen. I will keep you informed. The Copacabana branch is under control." She put away her phone, and her gaze, now devoid of the coldness from before and filled with a serene assessment, first landed on Lucas. He stiffened, expecting a reprimand. "Lucas," Mariana began, her voice soft, "I put you in an impossible position, and I want you to know that I saw your hesitation. I saw your discomfort. You carried out a direct order, but there was no pleasure in your actions. There was decency. Thank you for that." The words hit him with the force of an unexpected compliment. He visibly relaxed, a nod his only response, but his eyes conveyed deep gratitude and respect. Next, Mariana turned to the 2 saleswomen, who seemed to shrink near a display case. "Beatrice, Anna, please step forward." The 2 approached hesitantly. "All this time," Mariana continued, "I have been observing you. I saw the shock, the shame, and the helplessness on your faces. You were not complicit in what happened here. Your silence was not of approval but of fear, and I understand that." She looked at Beatrice, the employee who had recoiled with her hand over her mouth. "A store like this needs leadership that sees value in people, not just in stones. Leadership with empathy. Beatrice, starting today, you are the interim manager of this store." Beatrice blinked, stunned, as if the words made no sense. "Me? But Mrs. Mariana, I am just—" "You are a person who has shown integrity, even without saying a word," Mariana gently interrupted. "And you," she said, turning to Anna, who stood paralyzed, but whose eyes screamed against injustice, "will be the management assistant. You 2 will learn together, and you will have the full support of the headquarters." Surprise gave way to a glimmer of determination in the eyes of the 2 young women. Mariana looked around the sumptuous store, now under new direction. "Your first job is not to sell jewelry. It is to ensure that every person who walks through this door, no matter how they dress, where they come from, or the color of their skin, feels welcome and respected. The true value of Jewelry Empire lies in this." She gave them a genuine smile the first of that day. "The store is in your hands. I am sure you will do an excellent job." At that moment, the crisis had transformed into an opportunity, and the seeds of a new, fairer and truer culture began to sprout in the heart of Copacabana. Even before Mariana left the store in Copacabana, the outside world was already beginning to bubble. The couple of customers who had witnessed the confrontation not only left discreetly. The man, a young lawyer shocked by the scene, had recorded the last and most dramatic minutes of the event on his cell phone. The shaky video, but terribly clear, captured the order for a search, Mariana's dignified calm, the revelation of her identity, and Clara's summary dismissal. In less than an hour, the clip was on Twitter. In 2, it was viral. The hashtag #HumiliationAtEmpire exploded, followed by Taki Iam Mariana Almeida. The nation watched, outraged and fascinated, the story of the CEO who, dressed simply, exposed the prejudice hidden beneath a facade of luxury. The reaction was an avalanche. There was fury against Clara's attitude, but above all there was an overwhelming wave of support and admiration for Mariana. Her quiet strength, her refusal to be beaten down, and her swift and decisive justice resonated with millions of people who had, in some way, felt judged or belittled. The jewelry empire, instead of facing a crisis of image, found itself at the center of a national conversation about respect, racism, and the true meaning of value. Mariana's public relations team went into crisis mode, but the CEO interrupted them. "This is not a crisis," she declared in an emergency meeting that same afternoon. "It is an opportunity. We will not hide behind a press release. We will lead the conversation." And so she called a press conference for the following morning. Amid a sea of cameras and microphones, Mariana stepped onto the podium. She wasn't wearing a power suit, but an elegant dress that highlighted her figure, and on her wrist for all to see was the same braided silver bracelet. She didn't start with corporate jargon, but with a personal story. She calmly recounted how it felt to be judged before uttering a word. "What happened yesterday was not an attack on a CEO," she said, her voice firm. "It was a reflection of an evil that still haunts our society, a prejudice that teaches that a person's worth can be measured by their clothing, their address, or the color of their skin. At Jewelry Empire, we believe that worth is inherent. It lies in integrity, dignity, and character. She then turned the moment into action. She announced the creation of a new mandatory training program on diversity, equity, and inclusion for all of the company's more than 2,000 employees, from the board of directors to the cleaning staff. She also announced the establishment of the Empire Foundation, an initiative to fund and mentor minority entrepreneurs in the design and business sectors. The incident yesterday will not be a stain on our history, Mariana concluded. It will be our zero milestone, a reminder that we must be better every day, a reminder that the most precious shine is not that of a diamond, but that of human respect. The story of humiliation in the jewelry store became a corporate legend, a case study on how courage and integrity can transform an act of hate into a powerful force for good. The Copacabana branch, under the leadership of Beatrice and Anna, thrived, becoming the model for the most welcoming and profitable store in the network. And Mariana Almeida, the woman behind the empire, solidified her legacy not only as one of Brazil's greatest entrepreneurs, but as a symbol that true authority does not come from the power exerted over others, but from the dignity one refuses to surrender.